SkillBase First Aid, and in today's First Aid Focus I am joined by the brilliant Julian Hall from Calm People, an internationally recognised company for emotional resilience management. Now, as April is Stress Awareness Month, what better time to discuss the effects and treatments of stress, and with none other than an expert in the field. Julian, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining us. No, you're welcome. Okay, let's get started with some questions for you.
Okay.
So what would you recommend is best for stress relief?
Okay, so you've got to be careful what I say here, because actually I think a little bit of what you like is actually a good thing, and it's nice to have. Okay, so quite a lot of people I know will, they'll take themselves off for a spa day. They might just put themselves in for a massage, be that a really relaxing massage or it's a really good deep sports massage. And actually I don't think that it's a problem occasionally for you after a really long, hard, stressful day to sit down and enjoy a nice glass of wine. That's perfectly okay. The challenge with all those what we call soothers is that if we're not careful, they can become part of our lives, they can become almost an institution in our lives, and then before we know it, they're a habit. And we might go out of that stressful situation, but actually the habits might remain. Okay, so I prefer to recommend people something you can take with you anywhere you go. You can use it anytime, any place. We all do it naturally, it's just we don't do it that well. Okay, and what I always talk to people about is breathing. Okay, now this method I'm going to talk about and many others are all over the internet, and I think probably a problem with the internet we have is that it's so ubiquitous, there's so much free advice out there, people don't really listen to it, it's just noise. Okay, so this is one of the things that's out there on the internet that you can do that's really healthy. Okay, I call it 7-11 breathing because it helps me to count at the same time, and I need to focus on something called diaphragmatic breathing. So when we're stressed, we naturally breathe from our chest. Okay, we've got adrenaline, we've got cortisol going through us, and we start breathing through our chest. It's shallow breathing, we're not getting the oxygen we need, we don't make healthy decisions. Okay, so I can take back control of my sort of personal ecosystem by breathing properly. And what I do very simply whenever I'm feeling stressed is I return to my breathing, I relax my belly, which is where my diaphragm is. Okay, I take a nice deep breath in for a count of 7, and then I pause when my lungs are full, and then I exhale for a count of 11. And the key is that I'm making sure that I'm expanding and breathing from my diaphragm rather than my chest. And when I'm teaching this in classes with people, actually I recommend initially for people just to check they're doing it in a really healthy way, is put a hand on the chest there, hand on the belly there, and when they take a deep breath in, this hand shouldn't move much at all, this hand should move quite considerably. So if I demonstrate that, and then, okay, and hopefully the hand here is not moving too much, the hand here is moving in and out. If you do that for 6 or 7 nice deep breaths, then what you'll really do is you're starting to interrupt the source of stress, you're starting to reduce the adrenaline and the cortisol in your body, and quite nicely you'll start to take control of a stressful situation as well. And that takes about 2 minutes. You can do it for longer if you like, but I absolutely recommend breathing is the first thing I return to when I'm in stressful situations.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what would you suggest to someone who finds their workplace particularly stressful?
Okay, so this is an interesting one because I'm going to give some quite sort of a fairly sort of challenging bit of feedback at the beginning, but also talk about the workplace stuff as well. Okay, so I'm very well aware that 80% of the stress that goes on for me, and I'm not just talking about me, but 80% of my stress is about me, it's not about everybody else. Okay, and a lot of the stress that I'm under is about the choices I'm making, the lifestyle I'm living, and the things the stress situations I'm choosing to put myself into. Okay, so if I'm finding my workplace stressful, actually the first thing I do is I start examining myself, my behaviours and my choices, and trying to work out what's going on for me. Okay. However, okay, there's no doubt that some workplaces, some environments can be very stressful, and the onus is upon an employer to make sure that the workplace is not overly stressful. So the first thing I would do is I say go and talk to your manager. Now, people find that really difficult,
Yeah.
okay? They think that to admit that they're feeling stressed means they're not capable of doing the job. They're worried it'll go on their records somewhere. They're worried they may even lose their job. So people start catastrophizing about what will happen if they go and talk to their boss about the fact they're feeling stressed. Of course, one of the worst things you can do is feel stressed, bottle it up and create more stress for yourself by worrying about what's going to happen if you tell your manager. And actually, it's better is to get it off your chest, go and talk to your manager. The vast majority of them will want to know about it, they'll want to support you, try and make some reasonable adjustments and help you get through that stressful period because they value you as an employee, and that's what they would do. And you know what, if you go to your boss and you say, I'm feeling really, really stressed, and he says, I don't care, then perhaps that's not a place you want to be working at because they don't value you enough.
No.
Okay, so I would always say, if the workplace is stressful, talk to your boss, try and articulate what it is you're finding stressful, go and have a chat with them, but also examine what choices you're making, what behaviours you're in, what are you doing that's not helping you be as focused and as capable of dealing with stress as you could be in the workplace, because a lot of it is about us.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, how closely linked is stress with poor mental health?
Okay, so I think the two are really, really closely entwined to the point that for some people there's almost no difference at all. Okay, now people like Mental Health First Aid talk about the fact that there's a continuum. We're all on it. We all have mental health. We either have really good mental health, or we have, you know, diagnosable conditions which take us to the other end of the spectrum. Okay, and you know, stress is probably going to be somewhere along this end of that spectrum. If I've got a diagnosable condition such as depression, I'm pretty damn sure that the other things that it does, like challenges my self-esteem, it gives me less energy, I find it difficult to sleep when I'm depressed, those sort of things come into play, which means that my ability to deal with stress is also going to be impaired. So there we have that equation going on there. Equally, even if I don't have a diagnosable condition such as depression, if I'm not dealing with stress very well, I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm not really making healthy choices around feeling stressed, then actually if I take that long enough, I could end up heading towards burnout. And once I'm in burnout, I'm really on the edge of pushing myself into areas such as stress, anxiety, depression, and that's when we have what we used to term in the old days a nervous breakdown. You know, that's what people used to call it. We're much more considered and we know much more about what that's about. But actually our relationship with stress, as well as any other incumbent mental illnesses we might have, or mental conditions, those two can go hand in hand.
Yeah, brilliant. Will the stress subside if the pain points of the stress are not removed?
That's a really
It's a toughie.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So I guess what intuitive in there is there's things like, I'm in a really stressful workplace. If I leave that workplace, will my stress go? Or I'm in a really toxic relationship. If I leave that toxic relationship, will my stress disappear? And I think that the answer is yes, initially, absolutely it will. Okay, and whilst I always come back to take a look at yourself, work things out for yourself. Am I the cause of what's going on? Because 80% of the time, it's me and my issues that are causing me to feel stressed. Okay, so I always look at myself first. However, if I take a long, hard look at myself and I'm managing loads of things in my life that are relevant to my stress, like my relationship, my feelings, my self-esteem, the negative thought processes I can be drawn into, I'm managing my levels of optimism as well every day, things like that. And if I'm doing all these things and I'm committed to them, and actually I've still got this huge, great big lump of stress in my life, and I can identify it as it's that person there or it's that job there, then maybe I'm in the wrong job, maybe I am in the wrong relationship. Okay, I would be careful about that behaviour pattern though, because I have met quite a few people who, you know what, they've left a lot of jobs and it's always the job's fault. They place themselves in that victim position. It's not my fault, it's the job's fault, so they leave the job. But you know what, they go into another job and they find that one's too stressful as well. It's the employer's fault again. You know what, if you've been through 3 or 4 of those situations and the only consistent thing in there is actually you, maybe there's something going on for you, and you could do some personal development work, go and see a counsellor, go and see a psychotherapist, get yourself a coach that would really, really help you start to build your own emotional strength, so that maybe in the next job you don't find yourself blaming the job and actually find yourself in a really good job that you really, really enjoy,
Yeah.
and actually it's because you've made some changes, not because the job had to change.
Yeah. Nice. That's so true. Now, what symptoms can we look for to identify if someone is stressed?
Right, okay, so that's a great question. I think it's really, really important on two levels. One is that level of self-awareness, that if I can notice these things going on for me, then these are my signals that I'm not dealing with stress very well. But also, if I'm working in a team, if I spot these in my colleagues, maybe I can help them with their sense of self-awareness, and maybe I can make a gentle intervention that just says, you know, your behaviour's changed. Are you feeling stressed? Is there something going on? And do you need to talk to anybody? So what I tend to break them into physical symptoms, and then the other side is my behavioural and my emotional symptoms. So on the physical side, classic symptoms are things like headaches, muscle ache, particularly the shoulders and the back tend to be the pressure points. We carry our stress in our muscular skeletal environment. What else? I've mentioned headaches. Having a bit of a brain block here for all of a sudden. Irritable bowel syndrome, skin conditions, so people have eczema, psoriasis, things like that. They can be caused by stress. They can most commonly be inflamed by stress, and classically not being able to sleep. As well, okay. Now, if I go to the behavioural side, then classic symptoms in behaviours are things like feeling grumpy, irritable, intolerant, unable to make decisions, ruminating, coming back to the same problems time and time again, not really being able to make decisions, and falling into unhelpful habits, okay, that I use that I think are going to deal with stress, a few of which we've mentioned earlier, but those unhelpful habits that can then become addictions and things like that. So all those factors make up this issue with, you know, stress. And if you're going tick tick tick, I've got 2 or 3 or 4 of those, then maybe your body and your mind are beginning to tell you there's something going on and you need to take notice. Now, I've only named a few. You can find a list of all these on the internet, and they're readily available, and people can just find them. So have a look at them. If you're going tick tick tick, again, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you need to look at taking some different decisions for yourself, but take some action. It's really, really important for your physical health.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so besides the techniques that you advocate, what do most of your clients admit relying on when they are feeling most stressed?
Right, so we're into the guilty secrets sort of thing here, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. So if I was to ask people to list things, it roughly goes in this order. It tends to be chocolate. Okay. Food. And I'll come back to the food thing as well. There's a bit of a double whammy with that one. Alcohol, occasionally drugs, okay, and those tend to be the most common things that we start to rely upon. Other people will also say things like they'll binge watch CDs and series on TV, because what they're really doing is they're just binge watching to try and shut out all the noise that's going on in their mind instead as well. So back to the food thing, okay. When we're stressed, the drugs going through our body are adrenaline and cortisol, and evolution designed those in us to fight wild animals. Now, when you're fighting a wild animal, you don't really need to digest food, so our digestive system is suppressed. Just at the time when I fill myself with food, okay, and that means that we're more likely, most of us are more likely to put weight on when we're stressed, because we comfort eat at a time when our bodies can't really deal with it. The more modern habits I'm beginning to notice are things like shopping. We call it retail therapy, and that makes it sound nice, doesn't it? That's okay then. And also people who describe themselves as gym junkies. So I can't get through the day without going to the gym. I need some exercise. Well, you know what? If you can't get through the day without relying upon that, then the chances are you're developing an unhealthy relationship with exercise, or you've got an unhealthy relationship with stress going on, and you could do something different that might mean you don't have to go off and burn 1,000 calories or whatever it is.
That's true. So common though, isn't it now?
It is, yeah.
And lastly, what would you say that workplaces can do to best prepare handling stress?
Right, that's a great question. So I think a really good starting place is things like health and safety executive. They've got tick box things you can do almost an audit on whether you're operating a mentally healthy, less stressful environment.
Yeah.
Okay. Next step into that, I think, is mental health first aid is a really, really good idea. The idea that we could probably get to a point where almost 1 in 10 of every person in the workplace is skilled at spotting symptoms and behaviours, having that gentle arm around the shoulders discussion that says, is everything going on okay for you? Can I just direct you to maybe talk to a professional, your doctor, whatever it might be? That's a really good minimum standard.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I emphasise though, those are really only the minimum standards, and if you want to be a sort of a workplace that really takes care of its employees, and I would say that if you've got in mind, either written down or in your mind, that my employees are my greatest asset, which is what a lot of businesses will say, then actually investing them on an emotional basis is a really, really wise thing to do. And the reason I say that is you're investing them in on an emotional basis because you care about them as a human. And we find that the employers that we work with, what they've done is they've taken a considered decision that they value their employees so much that they just want to invest in them. There's no idea that, and you're going to pay this back for me. It's actually just, I want to invest in you because I really value you and I want you to work with me in the long run. And that means the sort of programs that we do and many, many other people do as well, people benefit from those both outside of work and in the workplace as well. And that's a genuine investment in the person rather than a pure investment in their skills. So I would say, want to have a healthy workplace, don't worry too much about having the fresh bowl of fruit in there that nobody eats.
No.
Okay? Don't be too worried about the dress down Friday stuff.
It's a
and
bit
all that sort of
overdone,
stuff.
isn't it?
Absolutely. And get some really good emotional resilience coaching in there, be it coaches, be it psychotherapists, be it the sort of stuff that we do, whatever it is. Get some people in there to help people develop the coping mechanisms because these are life skills and we all need these life skills at this time.
That's brilliant. I think we could all agree that we've had some real valuable takeaways from today's episode. It's been brilliant having you on the show today, Julian. Thank you so much once again. I'm Jessica Clarke-Wheatley from SkillBase First Aid.
And I'm Julian Hall from Calm People. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for watching.